All right. Welcome into another episode of Hockey Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. Getting all your fresh takes on the same Kings news around the NHL. As always, my co-hosts are Joe Paterino and Russell Morgan. How you doing, fellas?
Fantastic, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. You came into the chat, and I was jamming out here. I'm in a fantastic mood. First day off from work in like 2 weeks because, you got to push those sales, but feel good, feel relaxed. I think, what are we, a week away from hockey or something like that? It's pretty close.
There's a game on Friday.
Yeah, so we're getting there. We're getting there. How about you, Russ? How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Looks like that Brent Clark train just keeps on humming, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. First class tickets are sold out, fellas. You guys are right in coach. That's where we're at right now. But today we're talking about more training camp preseason news. We're going to be talking Vilardi stepping up to the table, and as everybody's favorite, trade rumors, and maybe how can the Kings affect the left side of the defense. And let's roll. All right. I want to pump out here. We got CJ in the chat almost like 30 minutes beforehand. Thank you for all of our loyal listeners who come in every single time in the live chat. Have fun with us. We appreciate you guys. We're nothing without you. But let's get this started here, boys. A lot of good training camp preseason talk going. We have plenty of people getting put down to the AHL. It's getting trimmed. The fat is getting trimmed down. We're getting closer and closer. Per cap friendly today. A couple more guys going down to the AHL. What did you think about those moves, and how does that really affect the team, Russ?
I mean, these are kind of moves we were pretty much expecting, I guess. I mean, just based off of waivers and how things are functioning and on the business side of things for the Kings and the roster, sending Jordan Spence and Tobias Bjornfoot and Samuel Fugimo down, I mean, it just made sense. You don't want to lose players like Gabe Vilardi or Jacob Moviari or Jared Anderson-Dolan, any of those players to waivers. So, I mean, to keep your asset and just purely asset management for those players being on the Reign is the best option for them right now. So it made sense.
Yeah, and I think if you're trying to trim the roster a bit as we get kind of going on toward the end of preseason here, I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't think it's anything too surprising, and we'll see what happens over the next week or so here in terms of what the final roster will look like. But I think it's as Russ said, kind of just asset management.
Yeah, we're getting good there. Let's start with the training camp. Some guys getting back off of injuries. I mean, obviously Cal got back from his little tweak in the first game, played the other night. We have Clark with the no contact jersey on. Arvidsson is out there skating with the team. His conditioning seems to be up to par, and a lot of the special team units there. So the team's getting healthy right in the right time. We don't know how many games that leaves Arvidsson out for the regular season or if he starts the season on the team. That remains to be seen. No official word there. But what are you seeing out of camp, and how is this team shaking up? Like, what are some of the positives you guys are noticing there, whether it be in the preseason games itself or from camp footage or camp news?
I think one of the biggest positives that I'm taking away from camp so far is, the line one is pretty much living up to the hype. I mean, they've looked like a legit scoring line one in the NHL. I mean, obviously it's just preseason, it's just training camp, but the way that Kevin Fiala has almost seamlessly been able to gel with Kopitar and Kempe. I mean, I don't know how many points those three have together in the preseason, but it seems like they have quite a few goals together. I think Kempe has like 3 goals. Fiala scored obviously with Brent Clark's nice pass in Vegas. So those three are looking really good. And you finally have a legit first line for the Kings for the first time in quite some time.
And well, not only that, Russ, you can probably speak to this a little bit better. So at full disclosure, I've been a little I was out of town over the weekend, so I did not get a chance to see Sunday night's game. And then ESPN was kind enough to black out the Kings game last night here all the way in Rochester, New York. So that's fantastic. So I didn't get a chance to watch that one, but in reading and following along and seeing some clips, the Kings also have maybe a little bit of some power play momentum going here, Russ. Things moving around pretty nicely on the PP, which is good to see. Gabe Vilardi, yesterday on the power play. He's playing down low. I think that's a little bit exciting. I know he's still working through, his role down there, but I think that there's a lot of optimism there. We were hoping to see some changes on the power play. Again, it's preseason. We don't know what it'll look like, but this is reason for optimism, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
in terms of, go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, having a legit offensive first line is something that we haven't really seen, right? I mean, it was always that 70s line or contribute from the third line here and there, and like, hey, we need secondary scoring. But I mean, when have we really had a legit first line that has just dominated night in and night out, that you can almost guarantee that a goal is coming from one of those three guys? I would say never in my history of watching the Kings where I felt that way. I mean, I know back in the days when Brownie was the captain and like you felt, confident about Brown and Kopitar meshing up, but he has a legit scoring threat on both sides. And I think it's one of the better top lines in the league, if we're being honest, especially in the division. So, I really feel that this is the type of line where late in the game, when previously we're like, hey, who's going to score for us to tie it up or do stuff like that? Like, this is going to be the line that they're going to put out there repeatedly in the third period to get crap done. And it's going to be well-deserved because they seem to be gelling pretty early in this season.
They have all the potential to be one of the top lines in the league. Whether it ends up happening and plays out, you never know. But yeah, all the potential's there to do so. And completely agree, Randall. You get to late in the game, you have a go-to trio that you're going to be counting on that, in theory, on paper, hypothetically, all that stuff is as good as has been with the Kings for years.
Yeah, I would probably say going back to the Gaborik, Williams, Kopitar line, that was probably the last time the Kings had a legit line one. But besides that, yeah, everything you guys just talked about, having them come down clutch late in the game, just to have three players you can look upon, and we're seeing, like Joe mentioned, we're seeing that new skill from Kevin Fiala starting to pay off on the power play. I mean, yeah, it's you don't really see any real big systemic changes on the power play. I mean, but you're seeing personnel changes, like Joe mentioned, in terms of having Vilardi down low. You have Fiala and Kempe seem to interchange in the bumper position on the wing, and then Kobe kind of just stays on the wing. But yeah, I think adding Fiala, having a full season of Doughty, I think that's going to be huge to have a pretty decent power play. I mean, it's looking pretty good so far.
I would disagree with you a little bit as far as the system part of it. We're seeing a lot more movement, and whether that's just the way Vilardi's interpreting his position on the power play, or if that's what he's being asked to do, but we're seeing a lot more movement from the guy down low, and it's opening up a lot more lanes and multiple other spots. It really led to Vilardi's goal in that game, him being in the right position. Joe, obviously, and I have been dissecting the power play ad nauseum compared to what the Reign do. Joe, what did you see? I mean, you were asked that question on Twitter. How does the power play look different to you from a system standpoint?
Well, you mentioned Vilardi's movement, and what really bothered me last year, and I wrote it, I don't know if it was after the season or in the play or whatever it was that I wrote the kind of the lengthy article, when you would watch the Kings power play, and I had multiple issues with it, but one was the bumper player was virtually a non-factor until Kaliev got there. They didn't have the right personnel to really play there, and they didn't put a guy like Kaliev there until late. And it started to look better then, but also the down low guy was too often. And so like when Kopitar would get the puck on the left, say the left circle, Deneau, for example, if he would camp out in front of the net and not move. And to me, that's just a waste. Where you see Vilardi, he's doing almost the opposite. It comes to his side and he's moving, he's sneaking to the back door, which is what opens some things up. So you're already seeing, just again, a little bit more movement. I do want to see, and I'm curious to know as we go along here, if Vilardi being down low and an option below the goal line becomes a little bit more of a thing that they look to incorporate a little bit more, because opening up below the goal line, again, it shifts the killer's attention down. They all have to look down, and that could then open up a quick play from flank to behind the goal line to one touch to bumper for a one-time shot. That's something else that could open up. So I just think the way Vilardi is moving and the way he's adapting to the down low position, I don't want to see a guy just stand in front of the net like it's 1977. Like, you got to be able to move, and Vilardi is doing that.
Yeah, it may not be big movements that the power play is making, but it's almost like just small little movements within like a 5-foot radius that players just opening up, getting themselves ready in shooting position, ready for a pass, not just standing there watching the play. And
Yeah.
I guess one thing I actually am thinking about it, seeing on the power play in terms of movement is I think it almost seems like Kevin Fiala's like got this like rover role where he's able to like kind of like go wherever you really find it kind of feels. He's got that bumper position, but like you said, like I mentioned, we've seen him and Kempe kind of interchange a little bit. I mean, Kempe I think would be more suited on the wing because he's got a legit shot. So if you have Fiala just being able to do kind of whatever he wants, just making himself available, I think that would be good for the power play.
Playmakers make plays. Like
To-
this is, I think it's fantastic.
He's got
To
the skill for it.
To piggyback off of that, like I actually think Fiala's better suited kind of down low,
Mhm.
and Vilardi in the bumper.
Yeah, he
And-
mentioned that too. That's what he brings. That was his first thing that he mentioned in the interview when he got traded was I'm a good in front of the net player.
Yeah, because he's kind of got that rover mentality, and he can go behind the goal, and he's really creative with the puck. He can create on his own, so he can make something happen kind of out of nothing from below the goal line. And Vilardi, Rando, we saw it in Ontario, was excellent in the bumper. He thinks that's where he's great in that spot. He's a good shot, quick release. So if you see in that situation where Vilardi's down low and you have Fiala in the slot, you mentioned where Fiala's taking time to rover a bit, go down low.
Mm-hmm.
You know what that's an option where you can see, and I'll be curious to see if we see more of this. Fiala goes down low, all of a sudden Vilardi pops out into the bumper, and now you've got a little bit of a combo there that goes Kempe, Fiala, Vilardi, goal type of thing, right? Like
we saw it a little bit with the Grunstrom Kaliev goal, right? Grunstrom earned that puck down low, dished it back up. And I know that wasn't necessarily like what you were talking about as far as from a power play standpoint, but Kaliev does what he does, finds the soft spot. Vilardi's good at that too. And you just find a way to interchange. And I think the big thing with the power play last year, it was perimeter.
Correct.
Yep. The defenseman takes a slap shot. Kempe takes a slap shot. We scramble and try to punch one in. Where now it just seems like everything's flowing a lot better, and there's a lot more. There's a weapon at every position instead of trying to get Kempe for the one timer.
And what opens up more now, because there was no option for that Kopitar to Kempe cross seam pass when there's no other threat. The Killers, they're not stupid. These coaches aren't stupid. They're studying the power play. They know the Kings had no threat. They had no bumper threat. They had no down low threat. You all of a sudden mix in movement down low. You mix in Fiala in the bumper. Then he's going down low, and Vilardi pops out to the bumper, and you start incorporating those guys more. Well, now all of a sudden that's going to spread the Killers out a little bit more. Then you might have a cross seam open up just because of this movement from Kopitar to Kempe that wasn't there in the past. So it's early days. We'll see how it evolves, but certainly some optimism, at least at the start.
So we're pretty much kind of, I guess, expecting that the power play, let's say Vilardi makes the team, the power play pretty much is looking like what we saw, I guess, in last night's game. Sub out Jordan Spence for Drew Doughty. Mm-hmm. So you have Doughty playing the top. It's kind of an umbrella where you have Doughty on the top, Kopitar and Kempe on the wings, Fiala in the middle, and then Vilardi down low. Who would you want to see on the second unit? I mean, what do you think, Joe?
Well, what's fascinating is I've wanted to see Kaliev more on the top unit, but it's hard to argue the way this has looked here early on. So I would think on the second unit, it would be Sean Durzi at the top. I would love to see Quentin Byfield on that left circle. I think they like him on the left.
Like the Kopitar spot?
The Kopitar spot on his strong side. I think Kaliev is a shoo-in for the bumper. I think he needs to be the bumper, and I think if you have a righty in Durzi at the top, a lefty in Byfield, and a lefty in Kaliev, that really there's potential there. And then, I mean, like we kind of talked about with Rando before, like I'm not opposed to having two D-men and having Wagner out there on the power play. I don't hate it.
Walker.
Excuse me, Walker.
Austin Wagner.
Yeah.
Austin Wagner.
Walker, sorry. And
or Brent Clark.
Well, hey, if he makes the team, I think that's the obvious one. Yeah. And I'm getting more interested in Carl Grunstrom down low. I don't know if that sounds crazy to you guys, but
I was just going to bring that up.
I I'm really encouraged by what I'm seeing, and I mean no disrespect here to Dano, Iafallo, and more. I just don't want to see him on the power play. I'm sorry, and if that offends somebody, so be it. I guess they're great players. I think they're great 5-on-5 players. They're great PK guys. I just would love to see those three come out after the power play's over. That's the line that comes out. You know what I mean? That's what I would do if I was coaching. That's my 5-on-5 line after the power play. And I think that's you're in good shape there. So that's how I would do it, Russ. I don't know what if you agree. And yeah, if Clark makes the team, he's for sure in there. But I'm not opposed to having 2D out there on that second unit.
For sure. I'll let Randon piggyback. I don't know if you have thoughts on who you think.
I think it's gonna be interesting, to start the season there. And I think even when Arvidsson comes back, I would like the first power play to stay as is, and that really forces Vilardi to play fourth line. And we'll talk Vilardi ad nauseum in a little bit, but I think Quentin Byfield would be a good. I think he battling in the corners. I know they want to play him in that Kopitar role. But I think Kaliev's also an underrated passer, and I think that Arvidsson would probably want to be in the Ovechkin one-timer type role. But if you can get one-timers from both sides, and then you can get some flow in the bumper, I just think it's going to be awkward because you can't not have one of your better shooters in Arvidsson not on the ice for the power play. So where does he fit in? Can he play the bumper role? He's not really a down-low type guy. But so it just really kind of opens that up to interpretation there. Do you play... Even though he's not a one-time specialist, you play Byfield on Kempe's side and just flip it over to where the one-timer's coming from Arvidsson, and then he can bump it to Kaliev like you're talking about in the center.
Yeah, I think if we're probably pretty much expecting Brent Clark to make the team. Who knows if he'll play more than 9 games?
I don't know that I am expecting it. I'll believe it when I see it. I wouldn't be shocked, but I'm just going to believe it when I see it.
I guess I'm like 85%.
Well, somebody lost your ticket and you're riding coach there, Joe Patton.
But the thing is, so I'll get into the power play. If Brent Clark is on the team, I think he has to be
power play too.
On the power play. He has to be on the power play.
If he makes the team and they don't put him on the power play, what are we doing?
Exactly. It's like he's clearly on the team because he's the best offensive defenseman you have. You're more than likely not going to be playing him a lot during 5-on-5, so give him the opportunity to excel where he can excel. So Brent Clark at the top point, like you guys talked about, Byfield and Kaliev, I think that's great. I'd put Arvidsson on the side, on the other wing. And then, I think what a lot of the things that you didn't like having to, or you don't like having to know down low. I actually do like having to know in front of the net. And I think him and Vilardi share a lot of the same skill set in terms of they're able to work really well in tight space. And we've seen Vilardi he's able to make those slick maneuvers, kind of dangle a little bit, just in a close proximity to himself. And that's what I think is kind of got him that spot down low, is because he can corral loose pucks with those hands he has. So if he can get loose pucks, get rebounds, put them in the net, or even feed them off to the wing or find an open man, I think that's what's helping him earn that spot. And I think Dano could play that role too. So I think that would be interesting.
I think that's a hard no for Joe based on his face.
It is a hard no. I will throw out there, and again, I think they like Byfield on the left, but we saw him play down low behind the goal line, Rando, a bit in Ontario. Big body, good in tight. I think he uses that shorter stick, which allows him a little bit more puck control kind of in tight to his body. I don't think that is a bad option either, especially if you're going to have 2 D men out there. It opens up the other flank as well. So I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. But again, there's a lot to still be determined.
You could get, like you said, you could get that righty being Clark or Clark and Dursey, and Dursey could be the right shot. You have Kaliev at the bumper.
Yep.
You could see a lot of that kind of stuff there.
Yep.
And Dursey's proven that he has that kind of skilled, almost that Alec Martinez type skill where he doesn't have a heavy shot, but he's able to find.
You just got to get it on net.
He's going to be able to get it through. And we saw that plenty of times through when Alec Martinez was here. Sean Dursey was able to do that on the power play.
No question.
If he could just kind of limit a lot of those turnovers he was giving up at the blue line, I mean, it felt like there was like 3 games in a row where there's like shorthanded breakaway, shorthanded breakaway, shorthanded breakaway. But one thing I'll say about Danault playing in front, remember there was one game last year, I don't remember which one it was, but McClellan after the game, he had brought out the Thomas Holmstrom comparison. So it's something that we'll have to consider when the power play comes rolling around, PP2.
Yeah, well, coaches have never made dumb quotes before.
Dude, that was right after you can't lead a horse to water. Or
Yeah.
It was right after that game.
We'll see. I mean, he's going to go with guys he trusts. I'm sure the power play will start a little bit, maybe on the 2, but as the season goes on, maybe he trusts more people.
Sure.
Now, this is a crazy throw out here, and I don't think this happens, but we'll just, if Clark makes the team or when he makes the team, because I still think it's win, by game 82, is he power play 1 quarterback and Doughty's power play 2 quarterback?
Ooh, that's
I don't think so. Only because like Drew Doughty, if Doughty did not have kind of this resurgence that we saw last year, I'd be more apt to kind of be yes to that question. But Doughty was having a really, really good bounce back season. We all know that it's been written about that he's got one of the worst contracts in the league and all this stuff, and his play has not at all lived up to it. But he did last year, and if he can continue that, and I don't know that he won't. I mean, I'm not going to bet against it right now. He showed that he can bounce back. So if he does it again, then I'm going to say no. I don't think so. But if we see Drew Doughty slip into where Drew Doughty was a few years back, maybe.
The reason I propose the question is that I fully believe that Clark will be on the 3rd line and he has to get most of his minutes on the power play. He's not going to be relied on the penalty kill, where Drew Doughty will be. And so, like, the amount of minutes that these older players are getting has to be relegated and regulated in some sense. So, do we get him more power play 2 minutes to where he's afforded more penalty kill minutes because he's one of the better penalty killers as well? I just think that's where it comes in because Brent Clark isn't going to be relied upon for that facet of his game.
I'm going to say no, and only because I don't think McClellan has the cojones to tell Drew Doughty he's being shifted down to 52 for a 19-year-old. Yeah, hey, Drew Doughty, we got this new young kid. We're going to have to shift you down, buddy. We got he's going to be. It's actually funny because when I was watching the game on Sunday, you see Brent Clark like skating to the bench and he's like yelling at Drew Doughty like, "Hey, get on!" And I'm like, Drew's probably like, "Who the hell is this kid? Like, what's he doing?" Like, it's kind of. I mean, Brent Clark. I mean, dude, he's got the charisma. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah,
that's a huge trait to have for a hockey player. He's got that Drew Doughty quality where he's always constantly talking on the ice and he's having a lot of fun doing it. And I think that's why a lot of fans can get behind Clark. It's not just all the moves that he's doing. It's this kind of almost star quality that not a lot of Kings players have really shown. I mean, Andrzej Kopitar and Dustin Brown, yeah, they're great players on the ice, but they don't really have a huge personality, I guess, off the ice. Brent Clark has a huge personality, and Drew Doughty is a little bit more quiet in terms of his personality. He's got a big one, but he likes to stay on the quiet side. Brent Clark just loves talking, and Kings fans love to hear him. So, I mean, that's what I think that's a huge trait to have.
We heard it last week with Sinbin. He said he absolutely loved the walk-off goal and just walking out the gate, like the personality he's going around. The only way T-Mac can introduce that idea to Drew Doughty is like, "Hey, Drew, man, Clark's been playing well. He reminds me of a young you, and that's why we're going with him for power play 1. Like, exactly. He reminds me of a young Drew Doughty." And and Drew's like, "Well, I knew how cocky I was at 19 or whatever." So, oh man, that'd be rich. I think the last one, which is what we'll, maybe in the trade rumor spot, we'll hit on a little bit further. But we can't be remiss. The hype train is still going for Brent Clark. It hasn't stopped. Mm-hmm. It's picking up speed. We're adding more cars to the back of the train. And then he goes and plays left side D, like they're giving him a shot over there. Obviously, I was blacked out for that game. You were at that game. So I'm going to give it over to Russell here. How did he look? And did it look bad? Is it something that we could potentially see going forward? Like, how do you envision that?
So it's funny. I actually wasn't at the game. I didn't make the trip behind the orange curtain, but I mean, I watched the whole game. I wasn't blacked out. I didn't actually notice Clark was on the left side till the 3rd period. So I think it was a gentleman by the name of Riker Riker, I'm sorry if you're listening to this. I forget your last name. I can look you up, but he pointed out that it's actually been going since the start of the second period. And then, so I looked at the NHL shift charts, and him and Walker actually switched like midway through the first. So I don't even know how I didn't catch it. I didn't see anyone else talk about it. So then when I first saw them out there, I was like, oh, wow, that's super surprising. I think why we probably didn't notice it, or I didn't notice it right away, is because Clark plays such a rover type game that you really don't know which side he's really actually playing until a face-off happens. So thinking about his game, I mean, I didn't really see any flaws. I didn't really notice him throughout the game. He wasn't really on the score sheet. And then I looked at the time on ice, and he played 20-plus minutes throughout the game. So, I mean, he's not really making it. He didn't really make an impact offensively. But if you're not making some, I guess, boneheaded moves defensively when you're playing a new position like that, I guess that's a positive takeaway.
They're literally trying to like do anything they can to give him a reason not to make this team, and he's like, exactly. I can do anything you want me to do, man.
Well, again, and that's what I like, is that they are playing the crap out of him. He's getting a lot of minutes. He's playing power play. He's playing penalty kill. He's even playing the left side, and I think that's really that's what you want to see. They're trying to get as much information as they can, because they have not a lot of time to see this kid, and they've got some difficult roster decisions to make, and this is a key player in this organization, right? Whether it's part of the future, the present, they really want to make sure that they're getting as much information as possible. He played every game in the rookie faceoff. He's playing all the time right now. They are really getting a lot of information now. My sense is he's making this decision even more difficult than it already is, which is a good problem to have.
Yeah, we got to see if this guy can play left side. And
yeah, I mean, I personally, as much as it was cool to see him play the left side, I don't think that's something that the Kings should do or look upon. I mean, he's still a 19-year-old kid. He's going to be playing his first NHL game. It's if he does make the team. Playing him on the left side on his off wing position he hasn't really played in quite some time, I think that would be a mistake. I honestly think that they're just getting that spot ready for when Sean Durzi is healthy. Well, then Durzi and Roy looked actually pretty good together when they played together.
Yeah, I like that. I like that duo. But the thing with Clark on the left is, like, we've talked about on the show that we can praise him and be on the hype train all we want, but we're doing all of us a disservice if we don't at least acknowledge some of the things that he does need to work on. And I've talked about, when the game is coming at him, when the speed is coming at him in transition, that's a little bit of an issue. And in the defensive zone, particularly down low, that's a little bit of an issue. I mentioned the penalty kill, his stops and starts, and the way he was the movement, it just wasn't natural. It wasn't smooth. And I think there's still some kinks to be worked out there. You want that player as comfortable as possible. I'm not saying those kinks are enough to not have him on the team. They may say, you know what, we can work with these. We're going to keep him. That's fine. My point is, you want it that as much as comfortable as possible, and put him in the best position to succeed in that. And I don't know that left side is the way to go for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sure. Joe just lost his meal on the hype train there.
I'm really slipping there.
So let's get to some fan stuff, interactions here that also deal with the preseason and bring in some new topics. The goaltending play. Sebastian comes in here. Do you see LA sending down Peterson after last game? I would say no, but it was pretty atrocious. What did you guys think of his play so far this season?
Yeah, so I'm watching the game, and going into this, first of all, we got to preface this saying, like, Cal Peterson's coming off an injury. He tweaked something. I think it was his hamstring or something. And so this is his first game back. He only had a few practices. You're watching the game, and you see some of the goals go in, and you're just like, oh, man, off Jordan Spence's stick. Okay, whatever. Wide open in front of the net, whatever. I mean, and then you see, like, there's a slap shot from the point that kind of just sneaks. He's not able to look around, I guess, the defender or the offensive player and find the puck and stop it. And you're kind of like, okay, that's kind of a bummer. And then you see the last goal that goes in, and it's like, oh, man. So I'm watching the game. I have fans, like, tweeting me, like, hey, are you worried about Cal? And after, like, the third goal, I was like, not really, not yet. And then after the fifth goal, I was like, okay, I'm worried. It's hard not to be worried. And yeah, I get it. It's a preseason game. Can't overhype this too much. But for a player like Cal Peterson that had the season he had last year, you need to have some momentum going into the regular season. You can't stumble out of the gates because, I mean, just me. If I'm thinking for the player, that's going to probably bring his confidence down quite a bit. You have to have, and I tweeted out too, like this is a season that the Kings need to have Cal Peterson be a good goalie. You can't rely on Jonathan Quick playing 50 plus games. It's just you can't. You're paying Cal Peterson to be a decent, let alone probably a starter in the NHL, and you have to get some production out of him. So that wasn't a good start for him.
No, but I'm not worried. I mean, it sucks that he got hurt, so he didn't get to get up to speed as much as we would have liked to have seen. That said, the 5th goal that he gave up is not a goal that goes in the NHL. It's just not. But you know what? He knows that. You saw the reaction as soon as it went in. He knew he's got to stop that puck. So it's early enough to where I'm not worried yet. I just think the position is a rhythm position. Sometimes it's a field position. I try to be really careful with trying to analyze goaltending because, man, it's just a position that it's just totally different. And I'm not worried right now. I don't like the game. I don't like the goal he gave up. The 5th goal was terrible, but I'm going to preach a little bit more patience. No, he's not going anywhere. He's not getting sent down. He's not getting traded. This is, he's going to probably start the 2nd game of the season. So let's just all be on board with that because that's, that's where we're
probably
at.
Starts Saturday, actually, the last preseason game.
Yeah. Let's get a little bit more info.
People are wondering, like, let's trade Cal or send him down. He's not going anywhere. Like, which team is going to want to trade for a goalie who's got 2 years left at $5 million that produced the way he did last year? And you're not going to send him down on waivers and eat that contract. That's just not going to happen. So That's why I talk about, like, the Kings need Cal to be good this year because there's really nobody else. Can't rely on. I mean, yeah, you want to say Phoenix Copley is going to be the backup goalie and probably play 30 games. I don't think that would be a great thing or even a good thing for the Kings. You have to have Cal Peterson be good.
Agreed.
Carter comes in here. Do you think if he has another bad season like last year, do you look for a trade partner? Do you cut him? Do you ride the contract out? Or is they're pigeonholed at that point?
Man, we've talked about this before. I just think the season has to be like so bad for them to even go down that road. Because then you're going into he's the only goalie under contract right now for next season. So like, I don't know what your plan is. And if it's that bad of a season, you're not trading him. Who's taking him? So you're talking about what, buying him out? I just don't see it. I think the only time I can think to see that maybe he becomes a trade option is when there's a year left on his deal. And even then, I just don't know how realistic that is.
Coming in here, Carter. Oh, go ahead. You want to finish that?
No,
off?
yeah, Joe's totally right. I mean, the thing I'll ask Joe is, like, what if he has a season much like last year, where he had 2.89 goals against average and a sub-9 save percentage? I mean, what happens then?
I think what the tough part is again, he's the only goalie under contract. So what do they do with Quick? If Quick, they may leave this decision up to Quick. Say, listen, you're a king as long as you want to play. And if that's the case, then maybe there's an issue with Cal because at some point Quick is a backup. Okay. I don't know.
Dominic Hasek played till he's like 45, so hopefully Quick can do the same because we might need him for a while.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. And I in my head, Cal is here, and I think it has to be as bad, if not worse, than last season for this talk to actually become a thing.
What's crazy is we were talking about in that draft. Obviously, we drafted Brent Clark, and I'm on that hype train more than anybody. But the other guy I wanted was Jasper Wallstedt, and he's starting the year off in the AHL for the Predators, already knocking on the door to the NHL. If we went the other route,
Minnesota,
he got drafted. Oh, Minnesota, yeah. Askarov, yeah, and Askarov with the Predators, yeah. Yep. So like they're both knocking on the door. First round goalies getting ready to take that next step. Spencer Knight got extended. Like you could be talking about the switch over right away, but then we wouldn't be having the fun Clark train that we're on right now.
Right,
exactly.
And so everything comes with a cost. Carter Scores asked this on Twitter, but then came in and I told him, I'll throw it on the show for him. So here you go, buddy. Do you think Mervari gets claimed if he gets put on waivers? I think he's shown in a small sample size that he's a solid third D pair. But if Clark becomes, I don't know what FT means. I doubt they full time. I doubt they waive a Walker or Jersey.
As the leader of the Jacob Moverari fan club, I'm going to say that I don't think he will get claimed. I just think there's so many teams in these crunches, and we talked about this with Cal Clegg last year. We were very shocked that he got waived and he cleared. I tend to think that he will he'll clear if he does go down. That said, I completely agree with Carter Scores. I love Jacob Moverari. I think he's a very capable third pair defenseman and a steady guy. I think he's a great fit for the seventh defenseman for this team. But if they determine that Brent Clark is going to make the team, then I do also agree that I think Moverari is the odd man out. They're not going to waive Jersey. And I would be very surprised to see Walker as well get waived, just given his contract.
I agree, Joe. And I was actually thinking about this earlier. Fans, we tend to overvalue, I guess, players, especially like fringe roster players that are
like Jacob
Moverari or like you mentioned last year, like all the tizzy that was going on with Cale Clegg, and like everybody was like
and I was guilty of it.
We see Cale Clegg like play pretty well for the Kings, and then he goes to Montreal and he's kind of so there. So everyone's like, oh, hope he does well, but it's not that much loss there. So I guess I'm with you there, like thinking like, yeah, if Moverari has to go down, I don't see a team claiming him. But do you take that risk though if you're the Kings? That's the thing.
I would try not to.
Yeah. I mean, if let's say he does get claimed, I mean, it's a small possibility, but let's say he does, then you're stuck with the only three left shot D-men in the organization are Anderson, Edler, and Bjornfoot.
Don't knock me on Kim. Don't knock me on Kim.
Kim down there, but he's never even played an NHL game. Like, I mean, yeah, that would be a tough thing to lose. So you're guaranteed almost for a right shot player is going to probably have to play like a lot of games in the NHL, which probably is going to happen even if everyone's healthy. But I mean, losing Moverari as it would sting, I think. And he's not only is he a really good player, I think he's a great player. I don't know. It's something to think about. I expect the Kings to carry 8 D-men at the start of the year until Clark. They have to make the Clark decision after 9 games, but. Yep. Yeah, because losing Moverari, I just don't think it's worth the risk. Is all I'll say.
It's almost as if, and here this is going to piss a lot of people off. So just putting that out there, it's almost as if there's like this defenseman in Arizona that the Kings could work on a trade for somehow. Is there something like that?
No way.
I don't know who you're talking about. If that does happen, then Rob Blake might have to find his treasure chest of ruples to get Kirill Kaprizov over from Russia to get another lefty over here. But Richard coming in here. So far in the preseason games, which player or players surpassed your expectations? I think obviously Clark's the number one, but let's go outside the box here, gentlemen.
For me, it's Grundstrom. I didn't have and I'm not saying I was down on him necessarily, but I really liked his game here. And I think he's really solidified a spot in the lineup. I think he could play third line if they wanted him to. Like, he's looked really good. I don't know, I've just become a fan of his game. And I don't want to say out of nowhere, he showed kind of spurts here and there, but he's, in my opinion, he's kind of kept this momentum that he built in the playoffs. I think he's had a pretty good camp. I'm liking what I see.
Yeah. It's weird that Grundstrom, because I'm with you. Grundstrom's looked great. It's just strange that he only played 9 minutes last night. I thought that was kind of strange to see after the game was over. But a player that I think has been great this preseason is Alex Edler. That's probably going to be the best value contract in the NHL this season. You're talking about a player who I believe he was top 5 in Corsi in defenseman last season, and then you sign him for league minimum for 1 year. Oh my God, it's huge. I mean, he's going to be another valuable asset for the Kings on the blue line. I mean, he was great for them before he got hurt, before he broke his ankle. We didn't even think he was going to come back, and let alone he comes back and plays pretty solid minutes for the Kings going into the playoffs. Man, I think that's just going to be one of the most underrated signings of the offseason, and it's great to have him back filling that role, especially if he has to take on the role of kind of helping Brent Clark ease his way into the NHL.
I think for me, it's not that I didn't believe in the kid. It's Artie Party. I mean, the kid is just continues to build on every single year. He adds more things, and now it's like, okay, you ask him to do the defensive stuff, and then people are like, okay, where's his offensive game? In the preseason, he's ripping one-timers on the power play. He's finding open spots, going across the goalie's body, beating him, glove side. It's just he's doing everything that you need to do for a player, and he's accepting each role or each task one at a time and passing and moving on to the next step and passing and moving on to the next step. And I just think he's really becoming a guy that, you could see eventually being a 30-goal scorer in this league when the team strengthens out, and he's going to be a positive role on that third line. I really have been impressed with him continuing to take the next step.
We've talked about Randon back in our Making It Rain, prospect growth isn't linear. His has been so far. He's really just kind of taking that slow but steady. The fourth line last year, penciled in right now, third line this year, getting a little bit more specialty. It's been very, very smooth, and I'm sure I just jinxed it, but it's fun to see.
Yeah, he's playing heavier too. He's a big guy. He's if he can use that body of his. I saw even at the start of Dev camp, he was playing a lot more aggressively. Using his body along the boards a lot more, and we're seeing him just shoot the puck almost every time he touches it, which is great. You want a player like that who has a shot like that to shoot the puck every time. So I hope he continues, and I think my bold prediction of him scoring 30 goals isn't that bold. I think there's a legit opportunity if he and Byfield can kind of mesh a little bit. I think there's a good chance we can see him eclipse at least the 20-goal plateau and maybe even touch 30.
CJ coming in here, Rando, cast the game from your to your TV from your iPhone with the Bally's app. Bally's Xbox app also works, and it wasn't blacked out. I'll have to check that out. So anybody else who was blacked out, we'll have to try that for the next game. Let's keep scrolling down here. I don't see any more questions so far. So let's go to our sponsor here at DraftKings. I'm pulling up the menu here. Hockey fans, it's finally time to hit the ice again. And thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. You're in for the season of a lifetime. New customers can bet $5 on any team and get $200 in free bets if they win. Man, there's some great matchups this year, like who's going to win the Calder, MVP, Hart Trophy. And I think always Kings come out hot every year. Let's go take the Kings in the over game one. If that wasn't enough excitement, you can turn small bets into bigger payouts with same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, and more for your shot at an even bigger payout. DraftKings is safe, secure, reliable. You can deposit your withdrawal for your cash whenever you want. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN and bet $5 on any NHL team to win their game. That's $250 in free bets if they do. That's draft code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions may apply. See show notes for details. Now, big guy coming in. We all been rooting for him. Vilardi stepping his game up, showing he's a man, putting his cojones on the table, scoring goals, being out there. And with the rumored the send down of the guy that I think is his biggest competition to start the season, Red Wing 2, in Fagemo, looks like he's going to start the season opposite of Trevor Moore on that second line. And I think it's well-deserved. What do you guys think?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's earned it with his play throughout camp. And it's funny because I wonder if they almost started Fagemo, because when they had Samuel Fagemo on that second line role, I mean, it was eye-popping a little bit because he's waiver exempt, still kind of a young player. Having him there, I mean, kind of would have created a lot more roster questions going into the NHL season. So I wonder if that was almost like a dig at Vilardi, like, hey, this spot is available, but we're starting him there. We want to see you work for that spot. And McClellan mentioned that after the Empire Classic, that Vilardi probably has it in the back of his mind that that's a spot he should be gunning for. And sure enough, we eventually see him make the switch with Vilardi up there, and he's looked great in that spot. I don't know if he'll be able to keep up with the pace that Moore and Danault have for an entire season. So as soon as Arvidsson is back, I think you have to place him there. I don't think that's any question. But right now, Vilardi's playing really good, and I think he'd be a solid placeholder for that line for the time being.
I just think the move to wing has been huge for his career. Like, we saw him get thrust into the number 2 center role probably earlier than he was ready for. Maybe if he spent extended time in the AHL and was able to develop a little bit more as a center, he could have stuck. But what happened. He had injuries and all that. And I think the move to the wing really just kind of helped him play more of the offensive game that he's capable of, slow things down in the offensive zone. I think that's where he's at his strength. I think the way that line plays off the rush, Russell, and is very good and on the forecheck as well. I agree. I wonder how the fit will be with Vilardi. But that said, I think he's getting an opportunity and he's taking advantage of it. And I think that's all you can ask for. And then you hope that he's making the coach's decision difficult for when Victor Arvidsson gets back. I agree. He's got to go back into that line, but you want Todd McCullough to say, how do I take Gabe Vilardi out of the lineup? And you find another spot for him. Right. And that's all you're hoping for early in the season. We should be cautious, right? It was Gabe. This is not about almost to the day a year ago that we were talking about the Vilardi line being. I know it was different because he was a center and all that. And
don't bring up Kachev because Russell and I might shed a tear on this podcast.
I'm just getting over that, all right?
I'm just saying, but again, I do think it's different because he's on the wing, and I think he's a different player on the wing, and I think it suits him a little bit better.
Yeah, we don't know if he'll actually. I mean, if they'll have a long-term success on that line, but the thing is, he's earned that spot right now. Exactly. So you have to give him the chance to showcase it, and whether he'll be successful or not on that spot or in that position. For now, the way he's played the last couple of games, he's looked great. He deserves it, that opportunity to show if he's able to play that position. So, and I also think there's a mental thing aspect of it. I mean, in post-game interviews we've had with him, he seems a lot more chipper. And I know the LA Kings, they tweet out some funny stuff here and there, but I mean, this is kind of a small thing, but that tweet they sent out the other day with the pictures about all the players smiling, Gabe Vilardi was one of those players smiling, and that's not really something we see that often. So I think that's a small thing to take away there, and I hope he's doing better mentally. He's ready. He's coming into the season. I mean, because this is a player. I mean, we can go on and on about all the ups and downs he's had to start his career, but he just looks like a different player right now, and we're starting to see it on the ice too.
CJ coming in mentally, he just seems happy. Vilardi's attitude seems 100% better than it did last season. It's great to see. Richard coming in, he's putting in a ton of work and is getting rewarded rightfully so. I didn't want to miss this one from earlier because I knew we were going to talk about it. Let me pull up this right here. Carter Scores coming in. Where do you slot Vilardi if he's earned a spot, but everybody's healthy? I'm thinking fourth line winger, but get him on the power play one because, like we said before, it's been effective. Do you think ultimately that's what it'll have to be, similar to the Kaliev role of last season?
Yeah, I think it's a spot. I think it's Lemieux's spot. What are you thinking, Joe?
I don't see them taking Lemieux out of the lineup. So as much as I say I prefer Vilardi, like I get it. I get what Lemieux brings, and he had a good season last year, so I don't want to downplay that. So I get it. And he, Rundstrom, and Lizotte have had a good preseason. So I just think he'd be what a fit with Vilardi, Byfield, and Kaliev that would be. But obviously that's Iafallo is there too. So unfortunately, I don't know. I mean, I hate to see him be the odd man out, but I kind of worry he may have to wait a little bit and be the odd man out.
Well, let's just say if he plays, we'll say 5 games for Arvidsson. If he's a half point per game player, is that enough to keep him in the lineup in the fourth line?
It's just too small of a sample that I think McClellan, again, I think they'll say, you know what, we're going to tip your cap, keep doing what you're doing, and the second you get another opportunity, take advantage of it, because again, I don't see them taking. Iafallo's not going to sit. Kaliev's not going to sit. Byfield's not going to sit. Lazat's the fourth line center. I don't think they're going to take Lemieux out, and it's hard to argue the way Grundstrom's playing. So I'm not sure. It's hard to see the fit as much as I'd love to see him in.
They've talked about how they like to have these pairs, and Lemieux and Lizotte seem to be one of those pairs that they keep bringing up to know and more the other. Kempe and Kopitar now the other. I mean, so yeah, it's tough to find a position for Vilardi because if he does have that momentum, even when Arvidsson comes back, taking him out of the lineup is going to be a tough decision to make. I mean, the reason I mentioned Lemieux is, yeah, him and Lizotte play really well together, but Lemieux's kind of an interchangeable player. I feel like, especially for a player that's on the fourth line, you're not really looking for too much production there. I mean, I thought they played really well for the Kings and played really good for them last year. But if Vilardi continues this level of play that he's shown in the preseason throughout the start of the regular season, that's going to be a tough player to leave out of the lineup for sure.
Yeah, I think you sometimes need that offensive mindset. Obviously, nobody's going to play 82 games complete healthy. So if he can be consistently plugged in from anywhere from the first line, second line, third line, whenever they need him, I think that might be a role for him. My only thing is when the power play is effective with him on it, and then you disrupt that chemistry, is that worth it for fourth line minutes of a guy like Lemieux? Like, is that really worth it? I mean, I understand that he brings the toughness and fights and does all those things, and you need that to be a part of the team. But how often does that happen? I mean, versus how often is the power play on the ice, right? I mean, you see 5-6 fights a year from Lemieux, maybe, right? But you see the power play every game, like, so
a bite or two.
Yeah, a bite or two. So, like, I think it's just a bigger loss with him off the ice. So,
especially for a team that needs scoring too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if he's having success on the power play, taking him off power play one, when Arvidsson does come back healthy would be a terrible decision. I think it'd be tough.
When the Kings take the next step as a cup contender, can you see Vilardi on the second line as wing after space is made? Obviously, maybe when you think they're cup contenders in a couple of years, Arvidsson no longer on the lineup, that kind of stuff. Do you think? I mean, obviously Kempe and Fiala are going to here for the future. Do you see him as a legit, confident second line winger in the NHL?
He has all the skills. He's shown the flash. He's shown the capability. I mean, it's there. The talent is all there. It's just been a consistency thing, and I think defensive miscues have kind of hampered his confidence a little bit. But he said he's tried to rectify that. So if he can continue this level of offensive play and be a solid defensive player, I mean, I think the sky's the limit for Gabe Vilardi. I mean, he's one of the most talented players in the Kings prospect pool, I guess, if he's still considered a prospect. I don't consider him a prospect. I guess he's almost close to a veteran now at this point. But yeah, I mean, he can still develop into a solid top 6 NHL player if he can just stay consistent. Look how long it took Kempe to develop into a legit top 6 player. So if we stay patient with Vilardi, and I guess this goes with all the other prospects that the Kings have, if we just stay patient with him, hopefully we see him develop into that Adrian Kempe curve a little bit.
Yeah, I hope it's not all that way. I think we
Right.
start the curve a lot sooner with Brent Clark, I hope. Devo coming in here. Gabe's skating has looked better. His technique looks a little bit more polished, which makes sense since he hasn't really had much time until this last offseason to really work on his game. I think he's referring to his injury. When you're taking guys off the ice for that long, and then thrust into position, it kind of begs position maybe, when you're looking at the team that the Kings were. And we talked about this. I don't know if it was on air or off air, but if Brent Clark was drafted the year Bjornfoot was, he would have made the roster in his first year, right? Because the team was barren. Now the team's loaded. Like if Bjornfoot was drafted this year, he's not even being talked about to sniff the roster, right? So like the roster is completely different. Gabe was drafted in a time where the Kings were barren. He was forced into a position that maybe he wasn't ready for, especially after an injury. And, he had to take time to reset. And we don't know if that's good or bad ultimately in the long term. But right now, the early fruit is showing that he just needed more time and he wasn't ready to be thrust in the second line after that small sample size. And, coming from a big back injury like that, you really see why that is a possibility. It's not hard to read those cards, if you will.
Yeah, that's why I think a trade might be something that the Kings should look toward before maybe December if there is a hole in the lineup they have to fill. More specifically, the left side on the defense that they've been looking forward.
You guys are really hitting that home. We got one more here from CJ. If it comes down to it, who would you waive, Jad or Elias to Ontario? It's, I think, easy for me as Elias. I think Jad offers a lot more versatility with what he brings to the game.
Yeah, I think teams get more, I guess, connected to players that they've drafted and kind of developed. So, yeah, obviously they spent a second round pick to acquire Elias Anderson, and it's crazy that to think he's a 7th overall pick in the NHL, and we're just like he's not even really talked about. I mean, I think he's the 2nd highest drafted player besides Turcotte in the last 5 or so years on the Kings right now. So, I mean, yeah, Jad brings more versatility too. So I think that's a player you have to keep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right. Let's get to everybody's favorite part, trade rumors. Russell was doing a very good job at not, hinting at the name. It rhymes with Chychrun. But Jacob Chychrun into the rumors. Joe wrote that article a couple days ago about, hinting at the press conferences about what the rumors meant to him all season long, how he wanted to play for a contender. I'm going to give it away to Joe here. Talk about your article a little bit, how you came up with it, and why won't these rumors die?
So the first thing I want to say is the reason that we are talking about is because when the likes of Darren Dreger and Elliot Friedman link the LA Kings to a player like Jacob Chychrun, what are we supposed to do? Not talk about it. Go look at Edmonton. There's articles from Edmonton talking about Jacob Chychrun because they're linked. There's articles about the Ottawa Senators and Jacob Chychrun because they're linked. There's articles at the St. Louis Blues because they're linked. That's what happens. That's what you do. It's internet 2022. So I don't understand the big fuss about it. Not to mention, are we just blind to the fact that the Kings have a pretty big need on left D? Like, are we not acknowledging this? So
no, Alex Edler's playing until he's 45. All right.
I don't get why this is such a big deal. But anyways, so the thing in my article was like, we've always talked about lefty to Jacob Chychrun. It's always been just kind of this boom, lefty to Jacob Chychrun. But my thought was like, wow, with Brent Clark looking as he is, could the Kings kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone? I mean, is there a deal out there with Arizona that would include, and again, I don't want to trade, I'm not saying I want to trade this guy, but if you have Doughty, Roy, Clark, then you still have the likes of Jordan Spence, Helge Grans in Ontario. Is there a move around Sean Durzi? Or I guess to further that point, maybe even Jordan Spence, but just given the NHL status, could Sean Durzi be traded in a deal that, along with maybe a Tobias Bjornfot, another young defenseman, a first-round pick and a prospect, was kind of the way I was operating just based on the rumors that are out there. Would that entertain it? And what does that do for the roster standpoint is to me, it says, okay, well, if Durzi's out, Clark can slot in. You are still going to have, Wagner, or I keep saying Wagner, Walker on that left side, but like it opens up the spot for Brent Clark. And I don't know. I was trying to go out of it from a little bit of a different direction. I alluded to it in the article that this is not likely. I am not expecting this. For cap reasons, it just is going to be extremely difficult to do, not only for the Kings. They could not fit that deal in that I proposed. There would need to be money coming. And also for Arizona, they have to get to the cap floor. So there's a lot of variables here. I'm not expecting the trade to happen. I'm not thinking it's going to happen, but I think we're starting to hear a lot more around Chychrun that I think a trade is going to be happening before the trade deadline. So I would imagine the Kings, as Kings fans, you better hope they're asking those questions, right? Like, this is a need. He fills a need. So you better hope that the Kings are asking those questions and kicking those tires, so to speak. And I imagine they are, because they're doing their job. So I don't know. I was just trying to look at it from a different angle. Does Clark change the equation at all? Was basically my mindset.
I think it's with all these trades and, going all the way back to the Eichel trade to, JT Miller to whoever, like there's legit concern, right? Forsberg was like, okay, well, if he doesn't sign, does Nashville try to push for the playoffs and risk him walking, or do they trade him and get something? Like there's legit concern in all these. And, like now that the Kings are moving their way up to contention, they're always going to be in trade rumors for guys that can make them better going forward. Like they're always going to be looking for that. Hey, is there a rental that's going to be, useful? Is there going to be this guy that's going to be useful? and a lot of people are like, oh, well, yeah, I think the only concern that I think a lot of fans have is his injury history, and he had one good season according to him. But who is he playing with? Like, who is he playing with that, like, he's legitimately doing it all by himself, and you see the defense core in Vancouver, and it's, literally Hughes is the only offensive defenseman there, and his defensive numbers are atrocious. Like when you play with nobody, like, what do you expect from the guy? And then I guess injury is the only thing that people are really like concerned about, because he hasn't played a full season, right? But like, okay, I get that, but then we have Mervoire and we have Edler, we have Mikey Anderson. Like, I'm fine with Edler and Mervoire for 10-game stretch while we're waiting for him to come back. I really don't see the downfall to going for him, and eventually the Kings either are going to have to make this move, or they're going to have to find somebody in free agency, or they're going to have to draft somebody with the first-round pick this next year that vaults up into the guaranteed starter within 2 seasons. Those are a lot of what ifs, and Chychrun could solve that with one trade. I get you don't want to trade players. People were, laughing at you that, oh, you want to give Chromiak away? Well, it's like, we have to give somebody away. Like, they're not going to like want all of the leftover pizza that we're offering here. Like it's going to have to be something. Now, Joe, is the first round pick for Chychrun in this deep draft, is it off the table, or do you assume that the Kings are going to be better and it's going to be a late 20s pick anyways, so let's make the pick, or let's trade it away?
I would lottery protect it, but again, like, if the Kings, look at the moves they've made over the last couple of off seasons with Deneau, with Arvidsson, right? And they brought in Fiala. Like, they made the playoffs last year. The goal now is to start to win rounds, like, and become a contender. And Jacob Chychrun helps you do that. Yeah, for me, the first round pick is on the table. And so we're using Jacob Chychrun here because he's the name that's in the rumors, and he's an impact player, and he's only 25 years old, 24 years old. And oh, by the way, he's got a contract at 3 more years at less than $5 million. So he checks every box you could imagine. But
led the league in scoring a couple years ago.
Until the Kings address the position, it's going to be a question. Now, whether that's Chychrun or whether it's a different player, whether it's Travis Sanheim, who I know is made, like, it's not just Chychrun. It's just his name is the pot.
You're muted there, Joe.
Sorry, it just keeps getting brought up. But I think that, yes, for me, the first round pick's on the table.
Yeah, I think people just hear the name Chychrun. It's almost getting to that Eichel territory where you've heard the name so long now. Yeah. It's like, okay, like, let's get to an end point here. And I think that's why people get into a tizzy. But like you mentioned, Joe, the Kings got Jacob Chychrun. You're talking about having one of the best defensive cores in the Pacific Division. That's huge. I mean, and not even Jacob Chychrun, like even Travis Sanheim. I mean, we're going into the season. We don't even know who's playing on the left side right now. We have no
righty.
idea,
we know that.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a righty, which isn't the most likely scenario. You don't want it most. You want to have a righty playing on the left side. I'm not a big fan of it. I actually wasn't even a big fan of having Sean Walker playing the left side. And I hope he just sticks to the right side and they have Jersey playing the left side. So if you have a left shot defenseman that is of the caliber of Chychrun or a player like Sanheim or anybody else, that's a position of need that the Kings have. I just went down the list of players that the Kings have of less shot defensemen in the organization right now. And there's only like 4 of them that I would probably play in an NHL game right now. And one of them is Kim Noisiainen, and he hasn't even played a game in North America yet. So if you find a player of any good left shot defenseman caliber, I think that's a move that the Kings need to make, because there's really nobody coming up. You have what's going to happen when Alex Edler is gone next year. Toby Bjornfoot's going to be a player that's going to have to play probably 16, 18 minutes a night. Hopefully he can develop into that type of player, but I mean, I don't know. So if a player like that is available, that's something that the Kings have to listen to.
Richard coming in here. If you have guys like Doughty, Clark, Jersey, and Spence on every pair, then shouldn't that be enough scoring?
These are all righties. It's very rare to see teams trot out that, 4 or 5 right-handed defensemen. I mean, because Matt Roy's in that mix too. He's not coming out of the lineup, so that's 5 right shot D. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's difficult plays that a player. I mean, I remember watching the game on Sunday with Sean Walker. That was a player specifically I was watching. It was his first game in almost over a year. there's some tough plays that a player like that would have to make. I mean, let's say the puck is coming up along the boards, you're in the offensive zone, you're going to have to bring that up off your backhand and into your forehand in one swift move. You can't do that slowly because there's a defender coming at you quickly. So that's a play you have to make. Getting out of the zone, I mean, getting a pass from your D partner, these are all difficult plays that a player has to make. So as a righty playing the left side, so if you can find a legit left shot defenseman that can do that for you, man, by all means, make that happen.
I think this goes into my next question here. Why do you think Blake has not pulled the trigger? And I think my next question to you guys is, you think about it, we've really only given up 3 assets for Kevin Fiala, Victor Arvidsson, Deneau, and Alex Edler, right? The 2 picks and Brock Faber. Mm-hmm. And those are supremely impactful players. Like, we haven't really had to give up anybody in our pipeline or a big pick to make our team better at this point. It seems like, not that saying that this is the last piece, but the Kings, because they haven't done it so far, they can afford to do it now, if that makes sense.
I mean, the Fiala trade was a big one, and to me, they traded the first, and Faber, they dealt
first from,
but they dealt from a position of strength, which is what you should be doing, right, with the right shot D, and they're kind of still are in that. So my guess is it's probably the price tag, and I think it's in part because he is hurt, right? I mean, I don't want to gloss over the fact that he's not healthy right now. He's had some injury stuff pop up, so. And I think it's a legitimate concern. It's a very fair concern. So I think that's probably a reason why. That said, that's would be my answer, I guess, to your question is it's probably the price and perhaps in conjunction with the injury.
I think the biggest argument for why Blake hasn't really pulled the trigger on that, I guess, Mike Richards type deal where you trade 2 top prospects and draft picks is just looking back at last year where the Kings had to use 14 different defensemen throughout the whole season. I mean, the biggest strength that the Kings have right now is their depth. You have Jordan Spence, a player that looked legit in the NHL playing 24 games. Jacob Mobiari, who's your 8th defenseman who looked really good in his few seasons. John Walker might be a sitting. Helge Grans is on the come up. He's a young player that's probably going to be making this next step soon. So depth is a big thing for the Kings, and I think that's what's missed on a lot of these like analytic predictions that we've seen. I know Jay Fresh had one come out the other day that had the Kings finishing behind the Seattle Kraken, and I think they finished behind the Ducks too, or the Sharks. Some crazy thing, and I think you look at the roster. Yeah, it's like just the top roster, but what helped the Kings last year was all the players that were able to step in and play vital roles during, whether it be injury or whatever, had to bring players out of the lineup. You have players that were the system that the Kings are running. It's just easy to kind of mesh from the AHL into the NHL for these players, and we're seeing it happen really well for the Kings. So if you can keep a lot of these players, I think that's good. But I mean, if you're looking for just pure top end talent, will this roster match up with a roster like the Avalanche or the Calgary Flames or the Florida Panthers in the playoffs? I don't know. I mean, that'll be something you have to have. But I would like, for me personally, I think you have to pull a trigger for a player like Chychrun. That's just me. I think if he's available, as long as the price tag's not too high, you have the assets and you have some of the pieces that you can make a deal. I think as long as you don't give up Kaliev or Clark or Byfield, which I think the Kings could make happen. Rob Blake's, we've seen him make pretty good deals before, so it'll be a tough one to pull off. But I think they have the assets too.
And it may not be Chychrun, right? It may be somebody else. But the whole point is the reason Chychrun is a rumor, the reason Chychrun's linked to the Kings, and the reason the Kings continue to be brought up with this stuff is because the entire league knows it's a weakness for the Kings. The Kings need help on the left side of the D. So it's not a surprise that it's a conversation. It's like, what's so hard to understand about this?
I want to go into a different part of it. And I think one part of your article brought something to my attention. You know, Brent Clark makes this, obviously now we have more assets on the right-hand side that could be trade bait, but not necessarily for an established NHLer. What if we went with a guy that maybe just needs a new home, you know, a top prospect that we saw Cam York get waived down to the AHL. He was a first-round pick, played on the USA team that won the gold medal. And so is he type? Maybe we do a 1-for-1 switch where a right guy for a left guy, just balance out the prospect pool, a guy that can make that cusp jump next season. This person, Sebastian, comes in here and says, could you see them making maybe for a player like Keandre Miller? So is that does that pique your interest maybe for not that player, but maybe that prospect per prospect switch to kind of more balance out the right or left side of the young guys coming up instead of making that big splash?
I actually talked about that with Brock Faber because there was concern, there was question like, is he going to sign? When he didn't come, right, there was a situation where he had a chance to play, didn't. Is he going to come? Is he going to sign with the Kings? And there's a lot of questions. And I know people hate when I talk about Buffalo, but I just hear, I'm so involved in it that, Ryan Johnson, I believe is the name. They think they were deep partners, ironically, in Minnesota. Like Buffalo is very deep on the left. The Kings were very deep on the right. And I was like, is this an out of the box? Is this too like, hey, here's a right shot D for a left shot D prospect and make that swap? I still think Buffalo, I'm going to go back to them with Johnson being somebody that I don't believe has signed yet. And I still think there are questions if he's going to. Buffalo is deep on the left side, so deep that they may move Darlene to the right, by the way. There's another kid in Buffalo who I love. Modern day defenseman, young, small, like 26, I should say. Not a big guy, small, skates really well. And that's Lawrence Pilot. But if you go that route, you're like, is it addressing the need immediately? I don't know. Right? It's kind of like, I don't know. Like I don't mind the idea at all, but it doesn't. Does it get the Kings to win a round? Is
it that you're saying? Is it that much of an upgrade over a player like Tobias Bjornfoot, who the Kings would have?
Sure.
That's the thing. It's like the Kings' next left shot defenseman in the system is Tobias Bjornfoot. I mean, he's played over 100 games in the NHL. Now he's playing in the AHL, or more than likely playing in the AHL. So you're kind of looking to see, like, I think if there is a trade to be made, it would be more or less looking for a more established player, a player who's shown that he could play top 4 minutes, who's scored at the NHL level, who's played on a power play, not really a prospect, because then, like, what are you really kind of upgrading at that point? Tobias Bjornfoot has shown flashes, and he's still a young player that can grow into that I guess, quality NHL defenseman. So if you're looking for a trade, I think it has to be for a more established player.
A couple of names being mentioned. Nicholas Haig is still unsigned in Vegas.
I think that.
And then the defenseman from Buffalo, Matthias Samuelsson. Would you swap him 1-for-1 for Spence?
Yeah, I don't know that they would though.
Yeah,
he's playing the NHL. Like he's I really like him too. I'm not sure that Buffalo would do that.
This wasn't on the schedule, but there's a certain Arcadia kid that's unsigned by the Dallas Stars, Jason Robertson. What do you guys think? What do you think about that, Joe? That he hasn't signed yet still, and they seem to still be at an impasse.
They don't have any money. Like they can't afford the contract that he's probably going to get. This guy's going to get $8 to $9 million a year.
Deserves every penny.
I would say it starts at 8.5, and they don't have it. So
they have 7.8 right now, according to Cap Friendly,
and that's not enough. And you have a lot of money tied up into, they've got look at the contracts for Sagan and Ben, who are on the way out. I mean, Pavelski makes 5.5. He's got 1 year left, but like they don't have the money to do it, which is a big problem. He's going to be costly, but he's going to earn it and deserve it, I should say. So, I mean, I know that's been speculated by Elliot Friedman, actually, that it's, he's thinking maybe this comes in as a bridge at like 7 and change just to buy some time. But if you're Robertson, you're seeing these other guys.
Yeah, why? Why would you even accept that? Look at what Tim Stützle just got. I wouldn't take anything less than what he just got. There's no way if I'm Robertson. I mean, the only problem is, he's an RFA. So what do? You just sit out and not play.
Exactly.
That's the only option he really has. So unless the Stars send him somewhere, make a trade, I don't I don't even want to throw the Kings name out there because there's
How would
no
that
way
look for the
that's
Kings there, Russell?
right? There's no way that's going to happen. I mean, you'd have to get rid of Follow Walker. I know Kings fans will yell at me. I'm going to hear about it for the next week, but I just don't see it. Plus, Kings fans are expecting Austin Matthews to sign here in a couple years too. So I don't know how you fit them all under the salary cap.
Austin Matthews 24 or McDavid 26. Right?
Robertson. You're not. I mean, listen. I would love it if there's a way to maneuver that.
Exactly.
But how are you fitting 8 to 9 million? And you can move on.
Would you do Kempe and Iafallo for in picks for Robertson?
Stop it, Randon. Stop it right now.
It is the trade rumors segment, so
it is.
I'll throw that out there. But
we should probably be clear. Like Robertson has not been linked to the Kings. This is just we're having a little fun with that.
Fun.
The source is me.
To LA is he's from LA. That's the only link. So everyone's like, he's from LA. He's coming to the Kings. It's not happening.
Oh man, that's funny. I mean, Richard saying Matthews is never coming to LA. Won't be so sure. I think he's going to go wherever he can get the fattest paycheck because the cap is going up, and I think I forget who posted it, but it's close to going to be close to 10 million in 3 years when he becomes a free agent. I think he could get 15 plus, 16 plus $1 million on the open
100%.
market.
I did want to say before we do wrap up, and because it was talked about, it's been a topic of conversation on Twitter, and maybe if we get to this in a future show, I don't want to whatever, but and you talked about it, I think Russ maybe with one of the J Fresh models. I just want to say with these models that you see, these are not I go read The Athletic and read Dom Luszczyszyn's articles when he does these. He is not projecting the King. Whatever he gave the Kings, 93 or 86, whatever it was, pick a number. That is in their model the most likely scenario, right? I think the Kings were 22% to get whatever points Dom Luszczyszyn had assigned to them, but they are 16% to get 95 points. It's not as if he's saying there is no possibility to where the Kings don't get 95 or 100 points. There's ranges with all of these models. So what you're seeing is just what they peg as the quote unquote most likely. So just keep that in mind. These guys, it's easy to crap on them, but it's not easy what they do. And I don't even want to pretend to have any clue because it's way above my head, but if anybody actually tries to sit down and draw up contracts and values for each player, it's not easy, and these guys do a hell of a job, and we use a lot of their stuff. So I it's easy to crap on them, I think, but when you see the point projections, these are the most likely scenarios per what they're doing for their model. And and even Jay Fresh in his tweet said, personally, I am skeptical of a lot of these. Right. They acknowledged I don't know, but this is what it's saying. There's context to him. Just keep that. I don't know. Twitter is Twitter, but just keep that in mind.
I just think we talked about it with Sinbin, and I think it's going to be a case that there's always a team that drops a little bit. There's always a team that rises up. The Kings were a team that rose up last season. I think the Pacific is going to be a lot more congested than people think. And I think the point totals for most of the teams in the center are going to be relatively similar. I don't think I think you might see a couple of the top two come down a little bit in the point totals and still be the first overall seed just because some of the teams should get better. We'll see how that works out. So, I mean, it is what it is. I still think the Kings have just as much of a chance to get first overall in the division as they do to get the wild card, and some other team pushes forward. There was a lot of stuff that went right for the Kings last year. You could have a lot go wrong, especially on the defensive core this year as well. So I'm optimistic for first in the division, but you got to be cognizant that there's tons of other opportunities or possibilities. Nobody thought that we would make it through the injury-riddled March that we did last season, and it happened. Yeah. So it just, being cognizant. But, hey, I like to be as bullish as everything. Either Kings number one overall seed in the West. Let's do that.
Goaltending will be the biggest question mark for the Kings this season. That's the only thing. It's goaltending. Yeah. So everything else looks pretty good right now. It should be a fun season. I'm excited. Man, it's only 1 week away. It's crazy.
I like it. So, well, thank you guys for coming on. Thank you all for all the fans that are in the chat. Appreciate you. If I didn't get to your question this week, we will do our question segment again next week as the season rolls along. You can find our articles always at hockeyroyalty.com. Our Twitter handles are scrolling across the bottom, at Hucky_royalty, at RandoCommando24, at JW Paterino, at NHL Russell. Tweet us at any time. We love talking to you guys. Really appreciate it. King season only a week away. If you haven't got your Brent Clark hype train tickets, you're holding on to the train and now. There's no seats available for this year. You guys are late to the bell, but we'd love to have you on top of the train anyways. So thank you guys for listening. This will be on, we're recording Wednesday. It'll be out Thursday. And then hopefully we can get some more of the crossover episodes like we had with Simbin Vegas. Thank you again for him for coming on. Get some people in the mix here talking about the rest of the division and how they feel like they're shaping up. And as always, go Kings, go.
Go Kings.
Thanks, everybody.